Many visitors of the Basilica don't realize that by crossing St. Peter's Square, they leave a territory of the Italian Republic and enter a foreign country, the state of the Vatican City. The area on the map of Rome is not a district. It's a state with its laws, political system, anthem, flag and borders. If there's a border, there must be border crossing points, like St. Anne's Gate, guarded by the Swiss Guard and papal military police. Every Roman working in the Vatican crosses a border every day going to work, because they work abroad. Rome accompanies us all the time. We can't consider ourselves foreign workers. Our grandfathers, fathers of our fathers, remember times when Rome was a papal city. I must admit that for Romans, it's hard to get used to the thought it's a separate state. They treat the city as a whole. On the other side of the Tiber, 2 kilometers from the Vatican, is a Quirinal Palace, the residence of Italian president. St. Peter and Paul are looking at the visitors. What are the 2 papal saints doing in the president's palace gate? 150 years ago, not the Vatican but Quirinal Palace housed the popes. Rome was the capital of the state of the Church. For centuries, here met threads of political intrigues spun by European powers and by the popes. The papal state was established in the 8th century and soon gained a dominant position in central northern Italy. The state of the Church needed an earthly power, as it was described, a territory to manage. Some church people were worried that without it, without a territory, the Church would lose independence altogether. People were sure that the states of Church are necessary for the Church's freedom. Being a lay ruler made the Pope just another European sovereign. He ruled the country, led wars, signed treaties, imposed taxes, passed laws, and had an army. In the Middle Ages, it was acceptable. But later, the situation changed. In the modern era, the concept of Pope the ruler was clearly a failure. In the 19th century, a dramatic problem of saving the papal state became urgent. The Pope first believed he could satisfy the more and more liberal ambitions of his society, introducing some freedom of press and administration. Yet he never wanted to pass a constitution. This became a crucial sore point. The liberation ambitions were supported by politicians propagating reunification of Italy. Half measures of Pius IX couldn't stop history, which brought a dramatic change of guards at the Quirinal Palace. All ideas of reunification of political system in the peninsula were torpedoed by the states of the Church. Niccolò Machiavelli, great Italian thinker, said the states of the Church in the very heart of the peninsula were too weak to lead Italy to reunification or to create a single Italian state. But he said they were too strong to let anyone else even try to do it. Finally, an attempt is made. In 1870, a French-Prussian war starts. French troops, guarantors of safety of the Papal State, retreat to France. Piedmont troops set off for Rome. On September the 20th, Piedmont artillery fire at Porta Pia in the Eternal City. Soon after 8 o'clock in the morning, Bersagliers, Piedmont sharpshooters, enter. Papal forces cannot fight them back, and the Piedmont troops take the city. Official history has it that they were warmly welcomed. My family legend tells a different story. My great-great-grandmother witnessed the troops of Kingdom of Piedmont and Sardinia enter Rome. There was no big enthusiasm for that. After 2,000 years, Romans were used to various bigger and smaller invasions. The Bersagliers reached the Vatican. Swiss guards tried to fight them back. At 9:30, Pope Pius IX orders to hang a white flag over the basilica's dome. Rome gives up. And that's how a 1,000-year-old history of the state of the Church ended.
The
Pope faced a great problem of giving up a country with a 1,000-year-old tradition. As a head of state, he couldn't give it to the Italians or to anyone else. He took the only possible decision. In fact, he was forced to do it. He claimed himself a prisoner and didn't accept the situation. He still considered himself a sovereign of the Papal State, although territorially it didn't exist. The Pope closed himself in the Vatican and claimed himself a prisoner. He returned Italians all the territory of the state of the Church. The Savoyard royal family moved to Quirinal Palace. Rome became a capital of the United Italy. Pius IX, the first prisoners of the Vatican, had successors. Leon XIII, enclosed in the Vatican walls, tried to live a relatively normal life, set up vineyards and build roads to go for carriage rides. Pius X, Benedict XV, the Pope of the times of the First World War, they all followed a rule of not leaving the walls of the Vatican. They persisted in efforts to find a political solution of this situation. According to the political theories of that time, sovereignty couldn't exist without territory. The Pope continued his demands to have his sovereignty returned. It had always been related to the Holy See. The Holy See was a sovereign unit, not a territorial position. But then, sovereign authority without territory wasn't accepted. A state had to be created with a pope as a ruler. In 1920s in Italy was an era of fascists. After years of secret and unsuccessful attempts, the Vatican starts negotiations with Italian fascists. Why was Mussolini willing to solve the Roman question? Mussolini needed the support of the Church. His dictatorship wasn't easy, and he was aware that he didn't have the full social support. He had high hopes for reconciliation with the Church. He could count on the clergy's support and make use of the patriotism of Italian Catholics in his colonial plans in Africa.
Perché voleva fare delle conquiste in Africa.
Frankly speaking, I think the Church did the right thing, trying to find an agreement. However, signing it with a person seen as a dictator wasn't, in my opinion, the right move.
Secondo me non è stato una mossa giusta.
Pius XI's decision to make his peace, with the new Italian Republic was, in a certain sense, inevitable. I mean, the popes could not stay walled up as prisoners of the Vatican forever. And so, from a certain point of view, this was a very practical bit of realpolitik, of bringing the Roman question to a close. However, I think that the loss of the Pope's temporal authority was the greatest gift to the papacy and the Catholic Church of the modern age. Because what it allowed the popes to do is no longer function as temporal monarchs, defending their own territory, defending their own commercial and military interests, but it allowed them to become a spokesperson for the human conscience. So that when the Pope intervenes today, for example, in the conflict in Iraq, it is clear to everyone he's not doing so because he has a military interest or he has an economic interest. The Vatican doesn't have an oil company, the Vatican doesn't have an army.
The Lateran Palace, first residence of the popes in Rome, the history made a huge circle. Here, 70 years after the fall of the States of the Church, in 1929 the Lateran Treaties were signed. Crowds of Romans and journalists waited for Mussolini. Until today, in a great hall of Lateran Palace, there is a table at which a new political organism was created, the State of the Vatican City. The document was signed by Cardinal Gaspari and Mussolini. The government of Italy recognized sovereignty of the Pope over the territory of the Vatican. Not the size of the new state was important, but its existence, safeguarding the Pope's independence from the influence of lay politics. The aim of the state is not to care for a common good of the citizens, but to ensure its sovereign, the Pope, maximum freedom. That's why democracy wouldn't make any sense in this state. The Quirinal Palace will witness a diplomatic event. The President of Italy will greet a head of another state. Admittedly, the state lies 2 kilometers from the palace, but the guest of the President, an elective monarch and leader of the biggest church in the world, is a head of state. The Pope. The Pope is an elective monarch and the ruler of the Vatican State. But diplomatic relations with other countries are not held by the Vatican, but the Holy See. The term Holy See describes the highest spiritual power of the Pope. The Holy See has also meaning in terms of the international law. It has its representatives, nuncios or legates, who represent the Holy See. Foreign ambassadors are accredited to the Holy See as well. The term Holy See has 2 meanings. Firstly, it's a Pope's office. Secondly, the whole of the Pope and the Roman Curia, that is a Pope's office, supported by congregations, secretariat, papal councils and tribunals. They all help the Pope to hold the office of Peter. The Holy See, understood as the Pope's office, is the organ of the highest authority of the Vatican State. The Pope has two functions. He's a head of the Church and the ruler of the state. The microscopic size of the Vatican City is proportional to the scale of problems. The Pope is free from troubles connected with wielding an earthly power. The Vatican is the only state in the world without a nation.
Questo popolo, Benedetto, ecco, si dice che non è una nazione, non è un popolo.
The people are said to be neither a nation nor a society. We know that small population of the Vatican are factional population. It means that the people who live in the Vatican and have its citizenship don't form an ethnic nation. The Vatican State is cosmopolitan because its residents come from different nations. They do not form a nation, since they don't have their own traditions or aims. They live in a country which guarantees that a pope is not a citizen of another country. That's how the Pope avoids being subordinated to any government. This also guarantees freedom of the Pope's mission throughout the world. So the Vatican City is a functional state. Its territory is only 44 hectares, but there are all institutions and professions any other country has. Courts, police, armed forces, administration. Until recently, there was a prison. There's also a government led by a prime minister. The government resides in a huge building behind the basilica. The head of the government, like in any other country, is a prime minister. Who is the Vatican's prime minister?
That's I. The Holy Father is the sovereign of Vatican City State. But I have two titles. I am the president of the government of Vatican City State, and Vatican City State, you know, is a country, a sovereign country. So I'm the president of the Vatican City State, which means I have executive authority. Now, if we want to make a law, there is a pontifical commission of 7 cardinals, of which I am also the president, which makes the laws.
Cardinal Sciocca is a prime minister and the Speaker of the Parliament. There are more surprises in the political system of the Vatican. There is no private property. When the State of the Vatican City was created, its aim was to safeguard essential elements of the Pope's mission. This explains why there is no private property. Everything belongs to the Holy See, central organ of the Catholic Church. Everything in the Vatican, land, buildings, serve this mission. The lack of private property is a derivative of the Vatican's functions. But there are some conveniences every honest taxpayer dreams about. There are no taxes, no VAT or other fiscal burdens. The VAT tax doesn't exist because the Vatican doesn't belong to the European Union. The Vatican doesn't impose taxes. Workers of the Vatican don't pay taxes, but they pay for the pensions and health insurance. The State of the Vatican City exists to ensure freedom of holding the office of Peter by the Pope. It gives its workers work, health care, and pensions, doesn't collect taxes, doesn't accept private property, and doesn't give a right to vote. The Vatican is an absolute monarchy, but it still has the problems other countries have.
My biggest problem is making sure that we have enough income to cover our expenses. Now, we have income from the Vatican museums. We have a food store, a supermarket. We also have another store, it's like a warehouse store where people can buy things in quantity, Vignaccia. We also sell gasoline. And we sell it at about 30% less than in Italy. So we have a profit from that because we don't have the Italian taxes.
No wonder then, the two petrol stations in the Vatican enjoy a constant interest of the Vatican's workers and inhabitants. Cheap petrol and no taxes can compensate the fact of being a functional nation. From the Tiber to St. Peter's Basilica, a monument avenue stretches. It's Via della Conciliazione, Street of Reconciliation. Few people know it commemorates the events which led to the establishment of the Vatican State. 70 years ago, you couldn't see the basilica from the River Tiber. Once there were suburbs of old little houses. The basilica wasn't seen from behind the buildings. After reconciliation, the buildings were destroyed, and Via della Conciliazione provided a new perspective. Mussolini himself supervised the works. A big part of Borgo district was destroyed. An avenue connecting St. Peter's Square with Tiber was Mussolini's idea. It was opened on the 21st of April 1934. It wasn't an accidental date. April the 21st is Rome's birth date, a holiday celebrated by fascists who willingly utilized Roman imperial traditions. You became ecstatic when you were leaving narrow streets, old houses, and stood in front of the Vatican Basilica. However, we say today that Via della Conciliazione is beautiful, functional and practical because of the crowds of pilgrims. Since it's here, we should accept it. That is how history is created. It's the nature of history. Pompa's idea of Mussolini has become a part of Roman landscape. Heading for the Basilica, we go along a street which was a whim of the dictator and a monument of events which led to creation of the state of the Vatican City.